Hey everyone, welcome to another episode from Ampro Engineering. In this episode, we're going to have another installment of the buyer's guide. And just a fair warning here, this is going to be the worst buyer's guide you've ever seen. Why is that? Well, what I'm about to show you is terrible. So it's going to be hard to actually walk through this episode and explain why it's bad when it just is. Without further ado, zoom out a bit. Where do we begin? I guess elephant in the room. This car is styled to look like a trend that I don't know if it's still a popular trend, and I'm not here to badmouth the trend or anybody who has a vehicle who is built like this, but typically these modifications with absolutely enormous wheels are done to cars from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, known as, in this case here, this would be a donk, because it is a car from the 70s, and a car from the 80s would be a box, and a car from the 90s would be a bubble. I don't know how I know this, but I do. This car is modeled after a 1974 through 1976 Grand Torino. This would have the opera window option. The most popular version of this 74 through 76 car would be the Torino from Starsky and Hutch, which did not have the opera window. I guess we'll start with I don't know. I have no energy to do this. I guess we'll start with the chassis. And again, I'm not here to badmouth what they were trying to do with the appearance of the car. It's the execution. So first things first, these wheels are hideous. I don't know where they would have gotten this Pentastar idea, but they're just awful. The rubber, perhaps it was better when they were new, but this rubber is ridiculously hard. Okay, so this is from 2006 by Planet Toys. Wow, it's even got a little phone number there that you can call and complain to. Over here at the bottom, it says 30s is a trademark of Vanilla Gorilla LP under license. I don't know what those things are. Here it is calling the car out as a 76 Ford Torino. Technically, this is a Grand Torino. There is a Torino and Grand Torino. And yeah, so that's the underside of the car. This is probably not proportional. I don't have a remote control, and I will not waste a second getting this thing operational. If you want to see it run, I will post a link to another YouTube video that I saw of one of these operational. I can't be bothered. There is rear suspension. Not much of it. Looks like 8 to 10 millimeters. Is there, no, there's no articulation. There's a surprisingly small motor in here. I'd like to say 380 size, perhaps even smaller. Front suspension, nope, doesn't exist. Nope, no front suspension at all. Given the height, that's interesting. There's a differential. Okay, so I mean, you know, that's a plus. I don't know what's up with the rear cover on the pumpkin. It just confuses me. I'm not aware of what the hell's going on there. What is kind of cool is there are actual inner fenders right here. Can you see that a little bit? Which is kind of neat given how many RC cars don't have that. Although this is a very clear representation of a 74 through 76 Grand Torino, geometrically it's off. It's too short. It's too fat along the midsection here. The front end does something weird with the bumper sloping down for some reason. The bumper is way thicker than the rear bumper. The rear bumper sticks out too far. But, I mean, you take one look at it, and yeah, it's a 74 through 76 Gran Torino. This body is, I believe it's painted. I don't know, maybe it's not. No, judging by the color on the inside, which is like a flat blue, this vehicle has been painted. The windows are not a separate part. The windows are all molded onto the body. The mirror is gummy. It's pretty good, actually. What else? You know, all the little molding pieces here, they're very well painted. The taillights are transparent and again, very well detailed. All these pieces are nicely detailed. The Torino emblem at the back. You know, they've done a good job where it counts on the body, but the chassis is just miserable. These things can fetch a pretty good premium. I don't know why that is. I only wanted the body, but they seem to sell for around $100 to $150. I've never seen one boxed. I've only seen used ones. This one here has got some kind of, I don't even want to know what that is, but stuff on it. So yeah, they're kind of difficult to get your hands on them. I would say if you want to get one, take your time. You know, this one's actually in pretty good shape. There's a little scratch right here from a rollover, but that's about it. The car overall, I suspect that they're just not particularly fast and they don't have any traction, so it's hard to flip them over. The other one that I have, it's in even better shape, at least the body is. Try and get a nice complete one. Again, it's very hard to find them complete. If you are looking for them for a project, then again, you're also going to have to wait. They're pretty hard to find, and installing one onto a touring car chassis is not particularly straightforward. The reason I say that is because I've done it. So let's just get rid of that because it's horrible. So this is what I've done. And again, this body, it's just goo all over these things. This body is actually in better shape, but you can see that you know, it does have proper wheels and tires here. The chassis it is mounted on is a very custom Tamiya TA02 with a stretched chassis. I don't want to get into this right now because I'm going to have a whole video covering this build. Again, it's not a straightforward swap. It's possible, that's possible. It's likely that I've gone a little bit crazy on the build, which is what we do here on this channel. And do remember that this is a ABS body, which means if you're looking for something that goes fast, this is simply not going to survive any crashes. I mean, this is a separately molded grille. So unfortunately, speed and this body shell will result in ultimately its demise. I'm glad I apologized at the beginning of this video because I had no intention of driving this thing around. I hate it. That doesn't mean you should. Again, let's be objective here about this. I don't like this for a lot of reasons, least among which is the overall cosmetic appearance. I think it's just a poorly executed car and a complete cash grab. So if you are interested in what I have done to this body and how I did it, there will be a video coming up on the entire build process. One thing I wanted to point out is that, so here's the power switch, and this is, I'm assuming, where the battery goes, but the battery is not removable. Is there some kind of charge port? Let's unscrew this and find out what's behind it. We're doing this together. Wow. This is pretty old school. So you're telling me, I doubt this thing's any good. Wow. This upsets me also. So interesting. In order to access the battery, you have to manually unscrew the door. Now, before we blame the car and the manufacturer, what you have to understand is there's a lot of legal red tape when it comes to dealing with electronics intended for children and batteries. Now, I don't entirely know if this is the case, but I am simply giving them the benefit of the doubt. It is possible that in order to get the ability to sell this in the United States, you had to make sure that the battery compartment was not accessible to a child. I'm going ahead and taking the chassis off because I'm gonna throw it out. Oh, the antenna's stuck in there. There you go, problem solved. Gosh, there we go. And yeah, there's not much to this small resistor right there. A pretty basic, probably analog board. Yeah, there's just a couple of transistors and caps in there. There's not really much to look at here. I'm scrapping the chassis for parts, you know, I mean, that's a lot of good hardware right there. And check out the motor. I'm assuming that this triangular piece here is just a retainer because that is what was holding the motor in. And this little thing here was covering the electronics. I would say that these little surface mount components are capacitors. They probably are. because there's 3 of them. Check this out too. The front shocks actually, or I should say springs, actually are springs. They are functional. They just require so much force that I didn't think they actually worked. So the front springs do work. The rears, again, a lot softer. What gave it away was that the front bulkhead was in these little pivot points. So when I ripped out all the screws, I noticed like, wait, this thing can move? I take it back. That chassis isn't useless. Look at all the hardware that I've pulled out of it. So I hope I did not upset anyone here for this miserable buyer's guide. But at least I answered at least some of your questions on where this body came from, what this is, and why. Thank you all so much for watching, and I promise the next buyer's guide will be good.